Hey guys, I'm DN, spoken label. My mate here, Rich Rubin. Okay, Rich, take it away, buddy. You're gonna do two pieces from. I'm stumbling my bloody words here. Two pieces from your fantastic book, mate. Over to you, mate.
Thank you. The first story I'm going to do is from the section called The Way I See It, which is me mouthing off about this and that. And it's called The Trouble with Hot Friends or Why I Don't Drink. I'm sitting with Christopher in our friendly local neighborhood bar. It's boring. He's had a kamikaze shot, moved on to a Bombay Sapphire and tonic, working on making that vanish while I nurse a Diet Coke. He's starting to feel a little uncomfortable because he spotted a certain ex-friend at the other end of the bar. I'm just praying the guy stays there. On top of that, or maybe because of it, he's in the throes of a nicotine fit. So I sit with our drinks while he goes outside for a cigarette. As he walks out the front door, I see the identical emotions playing across the faces of every man sitting across the bar. It's like a movie scene. It's uniform, universal, and hilarious. First, the arousal. Damn, he's hot. Then the hope. Here's my chance. A brief second of optimism. They reach for their cigarettes and prepare to head for the door. Finally, the sobering realization. Damn it, I don't smoke anymore. If I didn't bite my lip, I'd burst out laughing right there at the bar. And belatedly, there's acceptance. I'm glad I don't smoke. I can read their thoughts like a cartoon bubble. Smoking is not a good thing, they think, though not without a touch of wistfulness. Or is it fear? And that's what it's like when you go out in public with hot friends. At least 4 times during the evening, Chris asks me if he looks good, if his body's appealing, if he's too fat, etc. And I respond in my usual way. You look hot. There are, after all, people who find his appeal increased by that tiny little gut he has. It's like you see this hot guy in that sexy little paunch and you think, this is a guy who's hot because he's hot, not because he spent 1,000 hours in a gym trying to become hot. He loves my description of the scene I saw during his cigarette. And I love being friends with him, so very different from me. He's a drinker. I'm not. The reason is because of what we talked about tonight. Chris told me how he wants to settle down with someone, have a domestic life, even raise children. And he will. He's smart, he's kind, and if there's any justice in the world, someone will find him who deserves him. Me? I'm not so young anymore. There are handsomer men in the world. And, well, let's face it, at this point, that particular dream just ain't gonna happen for me. Oh, I might find somebody with whom I'll settle into a nice relationship. Hasn't happened for a while, but you never know. But making a life together, getting a house together, having a relationship that might just last a lifetime, well, that's no longer in the cards. Chris is 28. It'll happen for him. Maybe not right away, but if it happens when he's 30, 32, whatever, there's still the possibility of a life ahead to make together. My life is more than half over, even by the most optimistic reckoning. The uphill run into making your life resemble what you want it to be has happened for me. And in some ways, my life is what I want it to be. or close enough. And this is the crux of the matter. I've had to do that without the lover in the picture. Why? Well, I don't really know. Just because it never happened, I guess. So c'est la vie, and now let's deal with reality. I'll do it alone. Pretty much always have, and I can't foresee that changing. I've created a life, a comfort level, a way to deal with what is and was and won't be. It's not ideal, but it's what I have. And not, when it comes down to it, so bad. I've stayed in control. As I said, I'm not a drinker. Let my life turn into at least a silhouette of what I wanted it to be. No one's going to wish they smoked because I step out of the bar. No one's going to care whether I have one cocktail or 20, except maybe the bartender. Drinking equals bars, equals wanting to connect, equals frustration. I'm not an out on the town type, and I'm not going to become one at my age. Out on the town equals wanting more. I've adjusted expectation to reality and don't put myself in situations that might challenge that. Situations in which I might forbid let loose. Letting loose equals trouble. And that's why I don't drink. So the second story.
Superb, mate. I've got to tell you there, that when you wouldn't have noticed it, your cat at the back of you then woke up straight away. You mentioned the words Chris at the back of you then needed.
How funny.
His
Because
eyes,
he never
ears
knew
just prickled
Chris.
up, man, thinking, oh, Daddy's woke up here.
uh, I'm going to toss in another little one that's like 1 minute
Go for it, mate.
long.
Go for it, mate.
And then I'm going to do things worth repeating. Because this one is so English. But let me find it. Where is it? I wasn't planning to do this one. Everything else I've got all nicely organized. Oh, hell, I'll just get the book and read it from there.
As you can see, people, Spoken Label is an organized podcast. Yeah, that's
Okay,
fine. That's fine, mate. Go for it, buddy.
got
Right,
it. You
you
ready
ready,
for
mate?
me?
Yeah, go for
Yeah.
it, mate.
So here's a very, very short little piece. I was living in London when I wrote this, but it's a comment, obviously, on humanity at large, not just in the UK. And it's called Mrs. England Takes It Sweet. Mrs. England sits at her window and pours herself a cup of tea. The wind wails in the walls. Outside her window, suddenly, a flight of starlings hurtles to the street, like kamikazes, like a hailstorm in black. Oh, shame, says Mrs. England. I forgot the sugar. As she turns her back, a little girl outside below runs after a pound note which the wind has stolen. A lorry driver sees the girl and slams his brakes on, but a starling sends him skidding. Poor little girl doesn't know which way to run. The wind wails in the walls. Heading back to her porch, Mrs. England hears the screams and pauses for a second. But she is inside, the screams are outside, and there is tea to drink. Back at the window, she adds a little sugar and takes a sip and adds some more. She takes it sweet these days.
I wasn't expecting that one off you then. So yeah, that's got a real raunchiness about that piece, actually, it has.
A
Yeah.
friend of mine said, I can't even stand to listen to this story. It's so nice.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, it's fascinating, that one. Yeah, I know. Let's just move on because I could ask you a question about that. 'Cause I like that. Yeah, I know. Give us your finale piece, Richard.
Okay. This is the final story in the collection, and it's a story that's very dear to me. It's called Things Worth Repeating. He hadn't been to the Russian River for years. He wasn't going now. But he remembered it well, though it had been, 15 years? Days spent walking by the river, nights of unspeakable pleasure. That funny little bar with a barbecue out back, where he'd eaten meat for the first time in 7 years. The woman who peered at him across the bar, sizing him up, and then whispered behindhand to him, people like you and me, we gotta stay one step ahead of the rest of them. A pause, a wink, and then, but only one step, so they don't catch on. It was in this area he'd awakened to the joys of the flesh, had discovered the pleasures that his body held for him, not to mention the bodies of others. Oh Lord, the bodies of others. He hadn't even thought of this in years. But now Eric was moving to the Russian River, and it was to be one of the more difficult goodbyes Ellen had said in recent years. He'd known Eric for a year, a difficult year full of promise and disappointment and frustration and joy. And now Eric had decided to leave New York, to move to the Russian River, leaving behind 1,000 memories and a great big hole where Alan's heart used to be. They spent a year moving together and drifting apart like cloud patterns, now near, now far away, now floating toward each other, now speeding away. A year during which Alan cared deeply, cared too much perhaps, cared not wisely but too well perhaps, for a man who had now decided to move across the country, moving to the very town where Alan had spent that rapturous summer of sun and sin by the Russian River. No warning, no notice. Eric didn't work that way. The final goodbye would be a sweetly melancholy one, as goodbyes tend to be between people who really do care about each other, but don't know quite how to show it, how to give, how to act, what to say, or even why. Maybe Alan thought he should just say nothing. When he started talking like a walking self-help book, it was probably time to keep his mouth shut. But he really did want Eric to be happy, to have beautiful days in the lazy Russian River sun and nights of joys such as he'd never known. He wanted Eric to look up one night and see 1,000,000 stars. He wanted Eric to stay one step ahead of the rest of them, but only one so they didn't catch on. The God's honest truth is that however bad he was at showing it, all he wanted, all he'd ever wanted, was for Eric to be happy. And more importantly, to simply be himself. Or both, to be himself and to be happy. Because what more could someone wish? It's a wish worth repeating, and not just for these two. It's a wish worth repeating for all of us in this screwed up and unloving and usually pretty wishless world. And so I will repeat it one last time for Eric and for Alan and for you who hear this now. Be yourself, be happy, and goodbye.
Fantastic. I've got to say with that last story, Rich, there, it shows you sometimes when you actually perform a piece, it actually comes out very differently performed than actually reading it on the page. And it had a different meaning on the page to me, actually, that did, interestingly
How
enough.
so?
Yeah, it's bizarre. I don't know. It seemed like you had that more driving voice in it. I was imagining it probably in my Mancunian accent, a more softer, laid back thing then. It was just the tone. It just shows you what, when you're reading the story out, how it goes differently sometimes. But it was still fantastic, mind you. And I loved the ending again. Be yourself, be happy, and goodbye. Because I think that is such a great ending of the story, that is.
This is a very, very important story to me, and I
It
could
shows.
hardly get through it and keep my composure.
Yeah, it shows straight away that, mate, really, really does. And that's why it's been, you can see with this book, and I don't want to keep it to heart because I'm saying point too much tonight now, but the book means a lot to you. And I can see that a mile off of it. You get people, I've had people on it before now, you see the books, they're just thrown it out in 2 weeks, not thinking about it. Yours has took you, what, 30, probably more years to write, and it shows because your heart's in it. And that's why hopefully, Rich, you'll want to come back on when you've done your murder mystery book because I want to hear
That
that.
sounds great.
Yeah,
Well, that'll give me an impetus to get moving on it.
get moving, mate. Definitely, buddy. Right, listen, people. That's it for today, anyway. So, me and Rich are gonna move on to the world of. We're gonna hang with the kids in a minute, aren't we, Rich? Aren't we? Move over to TikTok, mate. So,
Yeah.
but thank you today for this, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really, really enjoyed this today.
The
So,
pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
okay, people, yeah. As Don Callis over at AEW Wrestling says, stay safe and stay over. We will see you all next time.